Imagine having absolute, guaranteed victory sitting right in the palm of your hand, only to watch it completely slip away in just a matter of minutes. Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. A lot of you have been asking about how to use Notebook LM to create deep dives into history. So today, we're using it to analyze one of the most shocking military reversals in early Islamic history, the Battle of Uhud. It's an absolutely fascinating story that teaches us so much about strategy, human psychology, and honestly, the incredibly heavy price of overconfidence. So the main question we really need to unpack today is this: how exactly did a certain victory turn into a harsh defeat? I mean, how does a much smaller force fight so brilliantly, push back a massive enemy, and then, literally in the blink of an eye, face total annihilation? To understand this crazy shift in momentum, we have to look closely at the split-second decisions made right there on the ground. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the road to Mount Uhud. To set the scene, the year is 625 AD, the third year after the Hijrah. Just a year before this, the early Muslim community in Medina secured a miraculous win against the Quraysh of Mecca at the Battle of Badr. Fast forward to now, and a furious Meccan army is marching north, hungry for revenge and desperate to protect their trade routes. And you have to consider the sheer terror of the odds here. The Meccan army, led by Abu Sufyan, rolls up with 3,000 well-equipped soldiers and 200 cavalry. The Muslim army? Well, they started with 1,000 men, but right before the battle, Abdullah ibn Ubay decides he doesn't like the plan and just withdraws his 300 men. That left Prophet Muhammad with exactly 700 soldiers. Think about that for a second. 700 men facing down a highly motivated, heavily armed force of 3,000. Moving right along to Section 2, the perfect archer's plan. When you're facing an enemy more than 4 times your size, you need a brilliant counter-strategy, right? Prophet Muhammad chose to fight right at the base of Mount Uhud. By putting the mountain directly at their backs, the massive Meccan army couldn't surround them. The only real weak point was their left flank, which was wide open to a cavalry charge. To plug that gap, the Prophet placed 50 highly skilled archers on a nearby hill called Jabal al-Roma. And look at his exact command here, because this is absolutely crucial. Stay at your position whether we are winning or losing, even if you see birds snatching us. Crystal clear, no ambiguity. Their one and only job was to hold that high ground at all costs. So, with the trap set, the battle kicks off. And incredibly, the plan works perfectly. Those 700 Muslims fought with unbelievable ferocity. Key warriors like Ali and Hamza just tore through the Meccan lines. The Meccan standard bearers, the guys carrying the flags, were struck down one by one. Defying all mathematical odds, the Muslims swept through the ranks, and that massive 3,000-strong army actually broke formation and started retreating. Which brings us to Section 3, the turning point and fatal mistake. Okay, right here is where the tension spikes. The Muslims were winning. The enemy was literally running away, leaving behind their camp and all the war spoils. But up on that hill, seeing the enemy retreat bred a super dangerous sense of overconfidence. They looked down, saw the loot being gathered, and thought the battle was completely over. And that leads us to this number, 40. This is the heart-stopping turning point of the whole battle. Out of 50 archers, 40 of them chose to abandon their post for worldly gain. They directly disobeyed that strict, absolute command. Only their commander, Abdullah ibn Jubair, and a tiny handful of others stayed behind. Watch how fast this single bad decision cascades into a total nightmare. Step 1. The archers leave the high ground. Step 2. Khalid ibn al-Walid, who was commanding the Meccan cavalry and was, frankly, a tactical genius, spots this new opening instantly. Step 3. He wheels his 200 horsemen around the hill, wipes out the few remaining archers, and charges full speed right into the unprotected rear of the Muslim army. This leads directly into Section 4, chaos on the battlefield. The entire dynamic flipped in seconds. The Muslims went from collecting spoils to being completely flanked and surrounded. Absolute chaos. The organized battle lines shattered into frantic hand-to-hand combat, and making the panic 1,000 times worse. A rumor started echoing through the valley that Prophet Muhammad had been killed. But this is where we see the profound human element of the story. The Prophet wasn't dead, but he was severely injured, bleeding from a split lip and a broken tooth. Seeing this, a small, fiercely loyal group of his closest companions abandoned the wider fight to rally around him. They literally became a human shield, throwing their own bodies in the way of incoming weapons. The sacrifices here are just unbelievable. Abu Dujana shielded the Prophet with his back, taking so many arrows the accounts say he looked like a hedgehog. Talha used his bare hand to block a dart aimed at the Prophet, leaving his hand permanently paralyzed. And incredibly tragically, the Prophet's beloved uncle, Hamza, known as the Lion of Islam, was martyred, struck down by a javelin thrown by a highly skilled slave named Vashi. Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, Lessons from Defeat. Eventually, the Meccans withdrew, feeling they'd done enough damage to restore their pride. 70 Muslims lost their lives that day. But Uhud isn't just about military tactics. It's a masterclass in human nature. The historical sources always contrast this battle with Badr. Look at it. At Badr, strict obedience plus faith equaled an impossible victory. But at Uhud, disobedience plus overconfidence equaled a crushing defeat. It's a stark reminder that even the most brilliant plan can unravel in seconds if discipline gives way to greed. The texts show us that Uhud acted as a harsh divine filter. It tested who really had unwavering faith when things were falling apart. It exposed the hypocrites whose support was conditional, and it showed the lethal cost of greed. But perhaps most importantly, surviving that terrible storm forged an incredibly resilient, unified community. They learned the hard way, for sure, but the lessons stuck. Which leaves us with this final thought for you to chew on. How exactly can a harsh defeat build long-term resilience? The Muslims technically lost the Battle of Uhud, but the agonizing lessons they absorbed that day paved the exact path for their massive successes later on. They never ever made that archer's mistake again. It just goes to show that sometimes your worst setbacks aren't the end of the road. They're the necessary, painful lessons you have to learn to achieve lasting victory. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did.